The sound of water trickled gently from the kitchen faucet as I stood there, staring blankly out the window into the fading sunset. The golden light danced across the countertops, glinting off the dishes I hadn't had the heart to wash. My fingers gripped the edge of the sink, not tightly, just enough to keep me grounded. Everything felt still around me, yet there was a storm inside I couldn't quiet. I didn't hear the front door open. I didn't even hear his boots on the hardwood floor. But I felt him. I always felt him before I saw him. There was something about Jason. His presence was like a pressure in the air, heavy and unmistakable. He came up behind me silently, his breath brushing against my neck before I could even turn around. I didn't move. Not because I was afraid, but because I was too tired to speak, too hollow to argue. We had been fighting on and off for weeks, arguments about nothing and everything. The laundry left in the dryer. The way I talked too softly. The fact I always cried when I thought he wasn't watching. Jason wasn't cruel, not in the ways you read about in dramatic stories. But there was a weight in how he loved me. Too intense, too fast, and often too rough for my weary heart. His hands found my waist, firm and insistent. He pressed against me, not forcefully, but in a way that made it clear he needed to feel in control. I still didn't move. My eyes stayed fixed on a cardinal perched in the tree outside the window, its red feathers vibrant against the dusky sky. I thought of flying then. I thought of escaping the way that bird could, just open my wings and disappear over the rooftops. But instead, I stood still. Jason's voice was low, a whisper almost, but it was sharp against my ear. "Why do you do this? Just shut down like this?" he said. "I come home, and you're just gone." I didn't answer. I wasn't gone. I was just somewhere deep inside myself, somewhere he couldn't reach. His grip tightened for a moment before he let out a sigh and leaned his head against the back of my neck. I could feel his frustration, not just with me, but with life itself. Jason was a man who worked hard, who carried burdens he didn't know how to share. And I loved him, even when it hurt. Maybe that was the problem. Loving someone shouldn't feel like an act of endurance. But lately it did. He turned me around gently, and our eyes met. His were tired, rimmed with the kind of sadness that doesn't show unless you know what to look for. I knew. I'd seen it too often in the mirror. He cupped my face in his hands and pressed his forehead to mine. "You make me feel like I'm drowning," he said. "Every time you shut me out like this." My hands stayed limp my sides. I wanted to tell him that I wasn't shutting him out, that I was just trying to protect the little pieces of myself I had left. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, a tear slid down my cheek, and he wiped it away with his thumb. His touch was rough, not intentionally, just in the way that some people are when they're too used to hiding their own tenderness. He kissed me then, quickly and hard, and I didn't respond. I let it happen. Not because I was afraid, but because part of me hoped he'd feel the emptiness and finally ask why it was there. We stood in silence for a moment, the kitchen dim around us. The faucet dripped steadily, rhythmic like a heartbeat. Jason turned away and ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know how to fix this," he murmured. "I don't know what you need from me." His vulnerability cracked something in me. I stepped forward and laid a hand on his shoulder. "I just need you to see me," I whispered. "Not the version of me you want. The real me. The one who's scared. The one who feels like she's fading." He looked at me then, really looked, and something shifted in his eyes. A softening. A flicker of realization. "I thought you were strong," he said. "I thought you didn't need me to ask." I smiled, just a little. Even strong people break sometimes. He nodded slowly, and then he pulled me into his arms. This time his embrace wasn't rough. It was quiet, steady, and I melted into it. We stayed like that for a long time, surrounded by silence and the faint sound of evening crickets chirping through the open window. He didn't try to fix anything that night. He didn't try to touch me the way he usually did when words failed. Instead, he just held me. And maybe that was all I needed. Days passed, and the tension between us began to ease like fog lifting in the morning sun. We started talking again, really talking. Over coffee in the mornings, during walks after dinner. He asked me how I was feeling, and when I told him, he listened. It wasn't perfect. We still argued sometimes. I still went quiet more often than I wanted to, but Jason started to notice when I did. He'd sit beside me in those moments and gently take my hand without asking for anything more. One night, I found him standing by the kitchen sink, staring out at the stars. I walked up behind him and wrapped my arms around his waist. He turned, surprised, and smiled. "Your turn to sneak up on me," he said. I rested my head on his back and closed my eyes. "I've been thinking," I murmured, "about how sometimes we push too hard without realizing it, and how sometimes we let it happen because we don't know how to stop it." He turned around slowly, his expression thoughtful. "Are you talking about me?" he asked. "About that night?" I nodded. I didn't say no, but I didn't say yes either. I stayed still. "And you didn't notice." He looked devastated, but I touched his cheek quickly. "I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying we both have to do better. We both have to pay attention to each other." He kissed my forehead, and there was a tenderness there I hadn't felt in a long time. "I want to do better," he whispered. "I really do." And I believed him. From that point forward, things changed between us. Slowly, gently. We learned to speak without words. We learned to ask without demanding. He started coming home earlier. I started waiting up for him again. We'd cook together in the kitchen, the same place where everything had felt so tense just weeks before. One night, as we stood by the sink washing dishes side by side, he looked over and said, "I remember the first time we kissed here." I chuckled. "It was awkward. But honest," he replied. "And soft. You pulled away because you were scared, and I didn't push." I missed that version of us. I nodded. "Let's find them again." And we did. Not overnight, but piece by piece. We went on small weekend trips. We laughed at things that didn't matter. We cried during movies and held hands at traffic lights. We became partners again, not just people sharing a roof. We found love in the cracks of our brokenness, and we sealed them with compassion instead of silence. By the time spring rolled around, the kitchen no longer held shadows of who we had been. It was filled with light, with morning pancakes and late-night tea. We had learned to see each other, not just the smiles, but the quiet sadness behind them. And we had chosen every day to stay, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. One night, as I stood by the kitchen sink rinsing a bowl, Jason came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist, softly, carefully. I leaned into him without flinching. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I replied. "Because you're here. And because this time we're both awake."